So look at that. That's what I'm talking about. You see all that smoke lofting around my camp? That's where I'd be sleeping on my shelter. Hey friends, welcome back. I am Jason Salyer, and in our last video, we built this raised bed using no cordage, just some forked sticks basically. And it's a pretty simple way to get yourself up off of the ground in a really, really swampy environment. But the number one thing that comes to mind when people start talking about swampy, wet, nasty, hot environments is bugs, specifically mosquitoes, because they will, I know from experience, mosquitoes will drive you insane if you are not prepared for them. But there's one tactic that works quite well as long as you do it properly, and that's a smudge fire. I'm going to show you how to start one, and I'm going to show you a really, really reliable way to keep bugs at bay. That is a huge chunk of pine sap that has no doubt fallen from this unhealthy looking pine tree right there. That'll come in handy here in a little bit. Number one thing is going to be dressing appropriately. I don't like to use permethrin. I don't like to use a lot of bug repellents like DEET because it's basically poison. Long sleeves, covering up your arms. In this situation, the bugs aren't too bad. I'm getting bit a little bit, but it's not terrible. But tonight, it would definitely be worse. So long sleeves, tops and bottoms would be really important. Some way to cover up your face, such as this neck gaiter right here. Put this over your face. Put your hat on top like that and leave only the smallest amount exposed. I've even slept with my head completely covered like this. I know it looks silly, but you will not care about looking silly if the bugs are really bad. Gloves, that will save your hands from getting chewed up. They like to bite my knuckles and stuff, and it's really, really irritating. Socks. I've even had to wear, I've been in places so buggy where I've had to wear 2 pairs of pants, 2 long sleeve shirts, and then everything covering up my head wrapped up with like a shamog because the mosquitoes were so bad. But long sleeves are really, really important if you don't have the advantage of some sort of bug net that's got you in this cocoon of shelter, this safety away from the bugs. This stuff, if you've got a lot of it, if you've got a lot of pitchy pine or fatwood of any sort like that, this stuff smokes like crazy. It burns this black smoke, and I'll show you here in just a second. Well, I'll show you right now. This stuff is super sticky. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is just kind of roll it up like a burrito. Try not to get it all over my hands because it doesn't come off very easily. So I've got myself a sap burrito. I'll pull a little bit off, little smaller piece to light like that. Got a stick in it like that. And we'll just light this up. Look how easy that was. And this will burn forever. And it burns this nasty black smoke. Burns this nasty black smoke, which will keep bugs at bay. But this burns really, really hot, and it flames up quite a bit, so that may not be what you're looking for. In a smudge fire, what you want is really no flame. You just want the smoke. But I can use this to start my fire. And when the ground is wet like it is right now, you don't have to worry so much about clearing your area. I mean, you still want to do it. You don't want to set the forest on fire, but just clear out your small little area here. You're down to the wet ground right here. It's very wet, very moist. And that's where I'll put my smudge fire. And the wood that I'm going to burn is stuff like this. This is like punky, chunky, soft, squishy, decayed wood. And this stuff will smoke like crazy because it's got quite a bit of moisture content in it. So I'm going to gather up this stuff that's on the ground like that. Now I'm just going to light up. I'm going to light up my sap. Light up my sap. Just let it start burning like so. And then I'll just start adding all my punky wood on top of it. If you have this awesome pine sap like this or fatwood, that's the ticket. That's what you want. Because then you don't have to, because otherwise what you'd have to do is you have to build yourself a good fire, like an actual real fire, develop a coal base, and then you could start adding this punky stuff on there to get going. But if you've got all this sap, look at all that black smoke coming off there. Mosquitoes will not be in that smoke. So I'm just gonna throw this wet, nasty stuff on there, this wet, punky wood, and I'm gonna let it smoke like crazy. go. And what I would want to do is I'd want to build this kind of upwind of my shelter, because I want the wind to push that smoke into my shelter right now. So it's not really windy at all today. And you can kind of see where the smoke is going. It's just kind of going sort of straight up. And if I did it right and I managed this properly, you gotta be careful with this. I know, you gotta be careful with this. But you could literally put this underneath a raised bed like I've got right here. I could push that shelter or that fire up underneath my shelter, and then just let the smoke kind of loft up around me and cocoon me in the smoke. Yes, you're breathing smoke. I get it. But trust me, if the bugs are really, really bad and you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, let's say in a survival scenario, you will be grateful for that smoke. Native peoples of Florida used to do this all the time. If anybody knows about mosquitoes, it's people that lived in South Florida. They had smudge fires all around their camps. Early settlers of South Florida did the same thing. They had their houses, they would close up their houses, and they would have a smudge fire inside of their home to keep the mosquitoes out of there. And they'd have them all around the property because they were just trying to keep, all those biting, nasty, the biting flies, those are horrible too. So whatever you can do to keep them away, like a smudge fire, is the ticket. And like I said, if you've got that sap, you could really just pick up any nasty, not soaking wet. It won't work with soaking wet wood. You can't do that. It's got to be semi-dry but damp, kind of punky wood, and that seems to be the best for making lots of smoke. The sap is still burning right now, and that's cool. That's fine. What are some tactics you have used to keep insects at bay? Do you just smother yourself with DEET and permethrin and pray that the cancer comes fast and it ends you quickly? or do you use alternative methods such as this, like we're talking about in this video? Leave that in the comments for me. This is a birch. Look at that. Birch bark is good. Birch bark is an excellent fire starter. This stuff right here, you can see how the bark is in still good shape, but the wood itself is rotten away. Look at that, that's the wood gone. But the bark is in good shape because it's preserved with oils. And this bark will burn really well, and it smokes quite a bit, gives off some more of that black smoke. Just lay that on there. All this nasty stuff on the ground, just lay that on there. Punk wood, that stuff, excellent. Occasionally, to keep this thing going, you might need to put on some dry twigs, some dry pine twigs or something like that, just to keep the heat flowing. But if you've got that fatwood, you live in a piney area with pine forests, you will have fatwood. This is all fatwood. You can bust this stuff up and you can get chunks of it out of there. And just like that pine sap burns, this will burn very, very similar. It'll burn for a long time, it'll burn hot, and it'll produce lots of black smoke. So if you can find a stump sticking out of the ground like that in a pine forested area, it's probably fatwood. The reason why it hasn't rotted is because it's completely saturated with pine resin. That's preserved it. You could pull out this whole thing right here. All of this. This has been here for years and years. It's dead. And the reason it's not gone, pine does not last a long time. Pine's one of the fastest rotting woods there is, unless it's got saturated with its own pitch. That's what's going to keep it alive. So this right here, you could throw on the fire and that'll burn black and hot, and it'll burn for and it'll smoke like crazy and keeping bugs at bay. So look at that. That's what I'm talking about. You see all that smoke lofting around my camp? That's where I'd be sleeping, on my shelter. That flame will dwindle down eventually if I keep putting punky stuff on there. It won't really want to burn, but it'll just smolder and smoke. You are on my bed where I'd be sleeping right now, and you can see all that smoke coming around there, and that's going to be a relatively bug-free zone. And man, I'm telling you, it is a lifesaver. So what I highly suggest that you go practice this and build yourself a smudge fire like this one, so you know what it's like and how to manage it and how you can keep it smoking and burning. Because while you're sleeping at night, you don't want to be tending a fire constantly. You want it to be able to smolder for hours, and you don't have to really do much with it. So I'll save this piece of fatwood here. I'll save that pine knot, whatever you want to call it, and I'll stick it right there. And if I needed to stoke my fire up a little bit, I'll throw that on there. That is a cocoon of freedom from insects right there. Probably the most important thing when it comes to nagging, biting, irritating insects is just calming yourself down, trying not to scratch and itch all the time, just trying to find your happy place. And if you can get past all the bzzz around your ears and stuff, because it's just going to happen, if you can get past that and you can just try to block it out and just accept that they're going to bite you, like you're going to get bit by mosquitoes, just accept the inevitable and deal with it. It'll be much more tolerable than you trying to fight them, scratching and swatting all the time. You got to be in the smoke. You can't just have smoke near you. You got to be in the smoke to keep the bugs away. The bugs won't fly in the smoke. They'll be all around it trying to get to you. But if you're not literally in it, you don't put your fire where it needs to be, kind of like upwind like I was talking about, or directly underneath you, or just really close to you, then it's not going to work. Now, I've heard that there's various different plants that you can burn and the smoke is better for keeping mosquitoes and stuff away. But honestly, I've never had much. I've tried several different ones, like giant ragweed and stuff like that. Supposedly, if you burn that, it keeps the bugs away better. But it's just the smoke itself. Like whatever is produces the most smoke, that's what's going to keep the bugs off you. If you haven't seen yesterday's video on the raised jungle bed, make sure you go and check that one out. Dried animal dung works really good for this. So if you're in a place that has large herbivores of some sort, cows, buffalo, whatever, even like elk and things like that. I mean, deer poo would work as well. It's just small, but any kind of dried out animal dung works really, really well for this. But it'll just smoke and smolder for a long time, and it won't really ever flame up because it's compressed. This stuff up here is ground pine. Some people call it ground cedar, I think. It probably has several other names as well. But I have found that sleeping on this, making a bed out of this, or just sleeping in an area where it grows, it, generally speaking, it seems to be less buggy. I don't seem to get ticks on me as much. I don't seem to get eaten up with bugs nearly as much as when this ground pine is growing. For some reason, I don't really know why. You may have had different experiences, but for some reason, I think this is good. Ferns is the same way. Ferns that don't seem to have ticks on them and stuff like that, I don't really know why, but it seems like when I make a bed out of ferns or this ground pine, it works quite well for keeping the bugs off me. All of this would be excellent. This is a pine tree that's been here a long time, and the only reason it's still here is because it is soaked with resin. This would be really nice. That is fatwood right there. If I split this up, you'd smell a turpentine smell, and that would burn for a long time right there. This is sweet gum right here, and when you crush up the leaves, it has a very aromatic smell. It's quite nice. If I was to take a bunch of this sweet gum right here, crush it up like that, and then smear it on my arms like that, it makes me smell like that. And that will keep mosquitoes off of you as well. There's several plants. There's a lot of plants that will do that. Probably different ones in your area than what I have, but it will keep the insects off of you, at least for a short period of time. With my experience in these types of things, it lasts a very short amount of time before it fades and the mosquitoes come right back. So you'd have to keep applying it over and over and over again. Here's a good one, and probably better than the sweet gum, and this is a horse mint. I think all of the mints have a square stem, kind of like this one. And you could strip off the leaves off of that. And when you crush this up, really strong smell. And again, you could rub that all over your face, get that into your hair, rub it on your skin, your arms, everything that's getting bit, and that will help keep mosquitoes off you as well. Probably several others, like this is sassafras right here. One of my favorite smells. One of my favorite smells in the whole world. Right there, sassafras leaves. That would probably work. I don't know. I've never tested the sassafras one, but anything really aromatic like that, really smelly, pungent type smells, strong mints of that type would probably get the job done. So I've left this basically unattended for at least half an hour, and it's still just barely smoldering, smoking. I've done no maintenance on it whatsoever, and that is exactly what you want. Doesn't put off much heat, just a little bit. Puts off a little heat, not too bad. But now that I've got kind of a coal base down there, I could just keep feeding it punky, nasty stuff just off the ground, and it will just keep on smoking. I think I mentioned earlier in the video, you might occasionally need to put some dry stuff on there to get the flame back up and get some heat generated. But for the most part, that's gonna burn a long time and keep the bugs off you. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. Make sure you're hitting the thumbs up, subscribing if you haven't done so already. Can't wait to see you on the next one. Guys, if you'd like to further support the channel and get access to a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff, access to us, be able to ask us questions, gatherings that will be members only basically, then go to our website, go to survivaldispatch.com and become an insider. There will be a link in the description. Check it out. If you're interested in that, check it out. And I'd be really, really grateful for the support.